All right, we'll jump in. This will be our final large coaching group session for the year, and then we're gonna relaunch next year. And so just keep your eyes on your email for that. A little bit different format. We've learned some things along the way, but we're sharpening some stuff up just to make it, I think, not even better and even more helpful. So, all right, well, here we're going to jump in today. Remember, the purpose of everything that we do is we want to connect to Jesus and to each other, right? So it's about connection. Let's stay connected to Jesus and each other. We want to get better at our craft, and we want to have community. That's here. And so you'll have that community if you're still in your small groups. We're going to do one more small group session with your leaders through the end of the year. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about recruiting, developing, pastoring, and releasing our team members, whether it's worship or production or whatever. So I'm going to share the last two of those. I want to talk about pastoring and releasing team members. Firing team members or releasing for for affairs or for moving, whatever we did have to do to release them. But when it comes to recruiting and developing, we tapped in Jen today and just asked Jen to share with us her thoughts on the way that she has recruited and the way that she has developed and has done a great job. If you don't know Jen at all, Jen was born and raised in Arizona, been leading worship since age 16. So she's been at it for, what is that, Jen? Now, how many years now? Like 5 years?
Yeah,
16?
Yeah, that's it. I'm only 20.
Right. So tons of different leadership roles that she's held. She's actually a credentialed minister in the Ascent Church there in Mesa, and 5 kids and a mom. And so Jen is just super sharp and very intentional about what she does. Like we've asked her to do 1,000 different things, and sometimes she'll tell us no. She's like, no, I have to say no to stuff because I have to stay laser focused on what I'm doing. And so if you have your hand out there with you, we're going to be blowing through. Your hand's probably going to cramp up with everything that you're writing today. I know it's a lot, but I think it's really good content. So Jen, walk us through just some thoughts on recruiting our team, first of all, and then after we've recruited them, we've developed them. So again, this overall thing, it's kind of like birth to death of people on your team, right? I'm recruiting them all the way through. I'm going to wrap up by talking about releasing them. And what do we do with all of them in between, other than just hoping that they're going to be close to Jesus and hoping that they're going to be a good part of the team and not be a pain for us, to be an actual contributor and all that. And so the intentionality is really going to, one reason that we have Jen is just her direction towards intentionality. So Jen, I want to shut up. Recruiting and developing, please help us.
Here we go. I'm going to start with a quote from one of my favorite leadership gurus, John Maxwell. I don't know if you've ever read a John Maxwell book. If you haven't, you've got to pick them up, read them. But John Maxwell says, everything rises and falls on leadership. Now, I know that we all know as leaders, we feel a weight. We carry our teams, we carry development, we carry growth, we carry shepherding them. Sometimes we can feel really buried by the demands of leadership. But something that will help is if we can make recruiting part of our regular routine, it's going to become less daunting. If recruiting is something that we always have on the forefront of our minds, it will become part of what we do. And that will make it less challenging as we approach it. I do want to say this, there is no one size fits all approach to recruiting. So I'm going to lay out some principles. I'm going to throw out some ideas, and hopefully it'll help provide some direction, maybe even spark some ideas for your particular ministry. I will say this, don't be afraid to try new things. We have to be willing to try different tactics, try different methods and approaches to find what really works for our team, to find what works for our church, because something that works in my church might not work in Dan's church because it's a different demographic, it's a different size, it's a different area, and people vary depending on where you live. So don't be afraid to try new things, to figure out what works for your scenario, and then be adaptable. If 2020 has shown us anything, it's shown us that what we did last year in 2019 is not working right now because we're not able to do it. So be adaptable. And the way that you stay adaptable and the way you find what's going to work is just by trying new things. So don't be afraid to take a risk and try something different. So we're going to look at some tools for recruiting. The first one is this: be proactive. We have to be proactive in recruiting. Occasionally occasionally volunteers will just fall into our laps. That happens rarely in my experience, but for the most part, we need to actively work to build our volunteer base. We have to kind of be going after people. We have to have our eyes and our ears open in church, in conversations. We have to proactively approach recruiting. If we aren't proactive about it, it's not going to happen. We'll find ourselves stagnating with our team. We'll find our teams maybe even shrinking, because it requires intention. So be proactive. Number 2, provide avenues for recruiting. So hold auditions. You can add an interest form or a tab if you have a church app, or if you're using Planning Center. You can add an interest box to your your connection card, your comment card at church. What we want to do is we want to make information readily available to people. And so we have to have avenues. If we don't provide avenues for people, they don't know what road to jump on. They don't know which direction to head. And so we want to get as much information out there, as many different ways to communicate to people that there's opportunity for them to get involved. Again, otherwise people won't take steps toward getting involvement. So provide avenues, as many as possible. Even an avenue is by using people within your team. So I'm constantly encouraging my team to get out into the church and to meet people. We have a saying in our team that we're not going to be a green room team, so we're not hanging out in the green room. So get out in the church, meet people, and be listening and paying attention. Pay attention to conversations, and to be listening for opportunities where then you can present an avenue to someone. They meet someone and this person says, oh, I used to sing at my last church. You did? Well, let me tell you about this. Let me have you fill out this card. And then before you know it, you've got them heading on an avenue to get recruited. Number 3, clarify the options. We have to give people specific areas where they can get involved so they can determine the best fit for their skill set, for their interest type, and their commitment level. Clarify the options. If we just kind of throw a blanket announcement out there, yeah, we need volunteers. When there's a lack of clarity, sometimes people just don't know what to do. It neutralizes them. And so what we do in my churches, we'll say, hey, we have a whole creative department, and we have spots for graphic designers, photographers, videographers, lighting technicians, sound technicians, dancers, actors. We throw out a whole variety of options so that people can kind of determine, oh, well, that's something I'm interested in, or oh, that's something I have a skill in, or okay, I can't commit to a weekly being on the worship team, but I can commit to taking pictures at the church once or twice a month. So we want to clarify the options so that people have something tangible to grab a hold of. Number 4, we want to determine your method for recruiting, determine the method, and evaluate whether or not it's truly effective. This one can be tough because, like I said earlier, what I was doing in 2019, that method isn't working in 2020 for me anymore, just because of the way church looks. And so what we need to do is, if we're looking at our teams and we're like, man, I'm really thin on some numbers, or I could really use some help, we have to take a step back as leaders and go, okay, let me see what method is I'm using. And I need to evaluate whether or not this is the most effective way for me to recruit volunteers to the team. And it can change in seasons. There might come a time where I'm able to go back to a method that I've used previously in 2019. So there might just be a temporary shift in your method. But whatever you do, make sure you figure out what your method is, be real about it, examine it, see if it's being effective, and then make changes as needed. The method that we choose to use to attract volunteers, it's crucial. Our method is very, very important. And something I've noticed is that most people respond better to vision than to need. And I'm going to kind of explain this a little bit. Need-based recruiting, it works great for short-term commitments and opportunities. So that would be an outreach event, an annual conference, some sort of a special service. You do need-based recruiting. So like right now in my church, we're gearing up for a Christmas production that we're putting on, and a huge part of our goal is to reach people outside the church and bring them in. So we're doing need-based recruiting, where we're asking people to volunteer to come serve for one night of shows. That's need-based. This is a short-term commitment. It's just something that we're doing once and then it'll be done. Need-based. Vision-based recruiting, I feel, works best for long-term recurring involvement. That's where we want to cast vision so that people understand there's something greater happening. Vision based is I'm looking for people to join a worship team. That's going to be a constant, recurring, long-term commitment. And so if I just lead with need, that can come across like tasks. Whereas if I lead with vision, if I recruit with vision, I'm presenting a mission to people. When we lead with need, our message can tend to come across like we're looking to get something out of people, rather than inviting them to partner with us in a mission. Both recruiting methods are necessary at times, but I do think we want to be careful that we aren't trying to recruit long-term volunteers through need-based, because again, our message can come across like, I'm just trying to get something out of you because I have a position to fill. I'm trying to get something out of you because I need to get this done. That approach sometimes won't sustain people in the long run. Whereas if I cast a vision, this is our vision, this is what we're trying to do as a team, this is what we're trying to do as a church, and I invite them to partner with me, that vision should sustain them long-term as we work it out. So vision, I know that we're all familiar with the passage in Proverbs 29 where it says, where there's no vision, people cast off restraint. And the word also talks about the necessity of making vision clear so that people are able to run. And so we have to really work to determine what our vision is, not just as a church, but as our individual ministries and teams. And so if you aren't clear on what your team vision is, other people definitely aren't going to be able to catch on to it. So I would say as a leader, make sure you take time to really spell out and have an understanding of what your own vision is. So then you are able to cast it for other people. We need to make sure that people know and understand the vision before they're added to the team. I've seen sometimes where people add people to the team and then they try to paint vision and they try to cast vision, and that doesn't always work. We want people to know ahead of time what it is that they're choosing to get involved with. And this is why, because we have to remember that there's two visions at play when it comes to volunteers. The volunteer has a personal vision for their life, and then we have a corporate vision as a ministry and as a church. And the reason this is important is because those two visions have to align, and sometimes they don't, and that's okay. Sometimes a person's personal vision doesn't align with the corporate vision of the church, and that's all right, but it's better to know that ahead of time. It's better for people to know before they try to step into a ministry, whether or not their personal vision is aligning with the corporate vision of the church. So for example, in my church, we have a class that we call Start Here. So when someone is new to the church, we invite them to attend this class. And what happens in this class is we walk through the vision of the church. We walk through the history. We talk through our pillars, which is basically our priorities, the targets that we aim for in our ministries. We kind of paint the why of what we do as a church. And then the different ministry leaders are invited to come in and kind of talk through what their particular area of ministry looks like, what volunteering in their area of ministry looks like. And so the great thing about this class is that it opens doors for conversations. So on our team and our creative department, there's areas where people can jump in right away. And so what's great is in this class, we're able to kind of say, okay, if you're interested in creative at all, you can jump into creative tech right away. We will train you. You can jump into graphic design. You can jump into photography. You can, this is how you can get into this area. We're also able to specify that if you're interested in platform ministry, so what we do if you are a vocalist or a musician, we in this class lay out for people the process for getting involved on that level. Now on that level, we have a different process. We ask people to serve somewhere else in our church for 6 months. And the reason that we do that is so that the vision of the church and the heart for the church, so it can be fully understood and translated into their soulless person, into their mentality and whatnot, because we believe you're not just joining a ministry, you join a church. And we want to make sure people have a heart for the entire house and not just a passion for their one piece, because it's really one entire house working together. So
Jen, I want to clarify there. You're saying that I'm not serving on your team unless I'm a part of your church for 6 months.
You're not able to serve on a platform capacity. Yeah.
Okay.
So what we direct a lot of, people to do. So if they're interested in, because I have a lot of vocals come through, so they're interested, we discuss that interest right away. I'm like, that's awesome. So here's what I want you to do. And I'll usually point them to an area. I'll say, you can get involved in tech. That way you start to become a part of our creative team. You see the inner workings. You see the way we run rehearsals. You can start to see it and be a part before you join the platform. Another area where I encourage people who are interested in platform ministry, I encourage them to serve is greeting and hosting. Like, be a face that people start to see when they come in the door, so that when they see your face on the platform, they feel like they know you already. So that we don't ever want the people in our church to look at our platform and go, well, who are all these people? They're all strangers. When they feel like they know you, they'll trust you in leading. So yeah, that was something that we implemented a little more than a year ago. And it can seem, we've only had one or two people kind of rebuffed by it. But again, that's also kind of why we put that process in place, is because it will kind of help people to determine whether or not the ministry or even the church is a right fit for them. We try to work really hard at realizing that our church might not be the right church for everyone, and then that's okay. That's okay if this isn't the right place for you. We want people to find a church where they feel like they can put down their roots and they can call home. I want my church to be the right church for everyone, but it won't be. And so we kind of keep that conversation less awkward by just addressing it and talking about it. The thing is, the reason we kind of implemented this too is we actually, so my church, we have albums, we write music, whatever. Sometimes what can happen, even if you don't write your own music and you don't have albums out there, what can happen is people are drawn to spotlight, kind of like bugs are drawn to the porch light at night. People are drawn to spotlight. And sometimes we will have people come through that they just want to get on stage. They want their moment in the spotlight. And they aren't as interested in the ministry aspect of it. They aren't interested really in a team. They're not interested in loving the people of our body. They just want to get up there and be given the mic. And that's kind of hard because, again, we're a church and we're a ministry first. Before albums, before any touring, before any opportunities, we are a ministry to our particular body first. And so we want to make sure anybody that's up there has that heart. So we've had people come through that have had absolutely incredible talent, but they've been unwilling to commit to the process of the 6 months. And that's hard. It's hard when that happens. But I would rather kind of know that out the gate than rush someone into the team and then have to deal with it on the backside, because I've had that happen too, where we're just trying to fill that team with vocalists. And then you get a vocalist up there where, oof, this just might not be the right spot or the right timing, or they don't have the heart or the vision totally down. And then you're trying to deal with an issue. And that can become really, that can become more difficult. So it's better to know ahead of time. This 6 months, what it's meant to do is it's meant to infuse the individual with a heart for the house and a heart for God's people. That's what we're trying to do in that 6 months time. And the word does tell us to know those who labor among you. So it gives us 6 months also to get to know a person and to build relationship with a person, because we're going to need relationship as they step on to the team. Because here's the deal. If they don't have the right heart, if they're unwilling to serve in what seems insignificant, then they're unfit to lead in what is prominent. And I know that sounds that sounds kind of strong, but it's truth. We want to make sure that people have a servant's heart, that no matter what they're asked to do, they're going to do it, that they don't see greeting at a door as not prominent and not important enough. And so this helps us to really infuse and foster the correct heart that we're looking for. I'm not trying to build barricades. We're not trying to provide obstacles, I guess, in a way, build obstacles to keep people out. But we have a responsibility as leaders to protect the people in our congregation, to protect the people on our team, and to guard the integrity of our platform. That is a burden that we as leaders carry. So I have a saying, it's pretty raw and unfiltered, but it's the truth. This is what I say to people. I say, God isn't impressed with your talent, and neither are we. We're far more concerned about the heart. I love people's talent. It's fantastic. Talent is a beautiful thing, but I don't want to get impressed by it. I'm so much more concerned about the heart. I'm sure we've all heard the story in 1 Samuel 16, where the prophet Samuel corrected King Saul for his disobedience of God's command. And he said to him, man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. God always cares more about what's going on in our heart than anything else. Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, above everything else, guard your heart, for everything that we do flows from it. So think about that in a team atmosphere, that if we aren't guarding hearts, if we aren't shepherding hearts, if we aren't watching for that, everything that happens is going to flow out of the condition of that heart. And it doesn't mean that we don't walk people along on a journey. It doesn't mean that we're quick to cancel people. I'm not saying that. I hope you don't hear that coming from me. But again, we cast vision in the beginning. We have processes in place so that we can really know a person, and the people can really know what it is that they're getting involved with. Talent and craft, that can be developed. Skills can be developed. Skills can be worked on, but it's difficult to infuse the right heart into a person. We can encourage them. We can challenge them. We can inspire them all day long. But the result is really beyond our control. It's between them and the Lord. And so that's why I tend to we emphasize heart so much more than talent, because whether we like it or not, whoever we put on our platform is often regarded the same way as the leader, or even head leadership and head pastors. A lot of lay people will just look at a platform and they won't completely mentally distinguish, well, that person's not the pastor. They see people on a platform and they tend to hold everyone to that same level. And so that's why some standards and some understanding are crucial, and it's important because we're representing our pastor, our senior leaders, our head pastor, and we're representing God. So we're so careful at the front end in this recruiting process to make sure that we get the right hearts, to make sure we're starting in the right place, so that as we move forward, we're trying to just avoid as many issues as possible. So that's important. So as leaders, vision should be at the heart of everything. Vision is kind of our compass that guides us in what we're doing. So leading with vision, like I said earlier, it has to start at the recruitment phase, and it continues on through team onboarding, through developing, through shepherding. Vision should come in at the very, very beginning, because then what's going to happen is we're going to keep pointing people to vision as they recruit. We're going to keep pointing them to vision as we onboard them, as they join into the team, as they start to participate regularly. We're always going to be pointing people to vision, and that's what keeps people moving forward. So vision has to be at the heart of everything that we do. So there's 3 things I'm going to talk about with what vision provides. It provides a whole lot. I'm just going to hit on 3. Number 1 is this. Vision provides direction. I see this as the why of what we do. So every church should have a why. So even in your own ministry, if you have the church's why, you don't necessarily have to come up with your whole own unique vision. In fact, the vision for your team should definitely align with the vision of the church. So you might be a church that our aim is to reach the lost. It's to help heal the brokenhearted, to represent Jesus, to, give people an authentic encounter with the presence of God. The why, it gives us the direction. This is where we are headed as a church. This is where we're headed as a team. This is why we're doing. Vision provides direction. Number 2, vision provides clarity. This is the what. So in our team, we're a songwriting team. We're going to always be writing songs. We're a creative team. We want authentic worship experiences. We want to be generous givers of our time, our treasure, our talent. We're going to use creativity as much as possible. This is the what. This is the clarity of what we're going to do. So if someone comes in and they want to start a basket weaving ministry, we kind of go, okay, well, let's run it through the clarity of what, does this fit in with what we're going to do as a ministry? Does this fit in with the why? So again, vision provides some of these things to help us kind of stay on task with what we need to be doing. And number 3, vision provides guardrails. I call this the how. It keeps things moving in the direction that is needed. How are we going to hit our targets? So a guardrail for me is like, how am I going to be a person who leads people in authentic worship experiences? Well, I need to rehearse because the more rehearsed I am, the better I'm going to be on a platform. I'm going to learn my music. I'm going to develop my skills. I'm going to grow in my relationship with Christ. These are the guardrails. These help guide the choices I'm going to make. I have a lot of young people on my team, and I talk about vision giving them guardrails and how you have to look to where you're headed, and that helps guard your decisions today. It's like riverbanks. It keeps the water moving in a direction. If you make a choice that is not going to guide you to where you want to be, then that's a poor choice to make and you don't want to make it. So vision provides guardrails. So vision, vision, vision. I can't emphasize how important that is. And so we've got to remember that if vision is fuzzy for us, it's going to be foggy to anyone else. So as leaders, maybe take some time to really go, okay, is the vision clear? Is it a clear statement that people can translate and repeat back to me? And if it's not, we got to develop that and comb through it and get it to where our people clearly understand it and they can even repeat it to other people. So that's part of recruiting. Developing, I'll try to go through these quickly for you, Scott. Developing. Number one, lead by example. Don't expect things out of your team that you're not requiring first from yourself. Another John Maxwell quote, to lead any other way than by example, we send a fuzzy picture of leadership to others. If we work on improving ourselves first and make that our primary mission, then others are more likely to follow. Lead by example. So for example, I highly recommend vocal lessons for any of my vocalists. In fact, to join the team, I require that they have some sort of vocal training, whether they've been in choir all through high school, they've had private lessons, but I highly recommend that everybody be developing their voice and working on their craft. And so I try to communicate the value of investing, but what I actually do myself is I still take voice lessons. And so what it does is it helps to remove the fear from some of the other people on the team, because for some reason people are afraid, like they translate it like I'm not good enough. And so I have to go take lessons. And I try to flip it and go, no, you have an ability. Let's invest in it. Let's add value to it, because when you improve, you're going to feel more confident. And so I try to strip away the stigma from it by leading by example. So I still go for voice lessons myself. So lead by example. And if we aren't seeing what we want out of our team, again, I would challenge you to examine yourself as a leader and go, okay, am I setting an example in this? You know, if people are showing up unrehearsed, well, am I showing up unrehearsed and unprepared for practice? You know, people don't seem like they're spending time in the word. Okay, well, am I going ahead and leading by example in that? So I think someone says this, I'm not sure, but attitudes are caught, not taught. And I think that's the same with a lot of what we do. We try to teach people what we know, but we actually reproduce what we are. And so we've got to lead by example in everything that we do. Number two, set clear targets. Clear targets. Many times people fall short because they have no idea what the expectation is. And that's on us again, as leaders. It is easier to just not schedule the vocalist who's pitchy, or to not schedule that bass player who's constantly hitting wrong notes. It's easier to do that. Just avoid it. And no, that just don't get scheduled. But that's really doing a disservice to them and a disservice to our team as a whole. And so it's best to just kind of set a clear target. So let's say you've got a pitchy vocalist, to pull them aside. Hey, you know what? I love your heart. I love that you're a part of this team. I love what you bring to this team. And then we say, hey, I'm noticing when you kind of came in your pitch, you're struggling with your pitch on this. And, you know, so here's a clear target. Listen back. I will a lot of times give my vocalists the recording from the live stream. I give it back to them. And I'm like, don't go too hard on yourself. Live streams are notoriously unforgiving and unkind. But I'll say, I want you to listen back, and I want you to find one growth point for yourself. And I want you to find one thing that you did that you're proud of. And let's talk about it. So I set clear targets. You know, an instrumentalist who comes in and they're kind of messing up a little bit, you know, I'll pull them aside. Hey, I noticed you're kind of struggling on this song a bit. You know, it's real important that we have it memorized. Is there something I can do to help you with it? Do you need the songs earlier on? Again, we want to use partnering language. There's a way to kind of call things out of people, but still not make them feel like they're on their own and they're a complete failure. But when we set a clear target, I know it can feel kind of scary, but people actually do like the clarity, even if it's tough in the moment. They appreciate the clarity of, this is what I expect from you. I expect you to show up on time. I expect you to have your music memorized. I expect you to be able to sing this without having to stare at the confidence monitor. And there's always grace in there. I get it. Sometimes things happen in life, but if something happens every single time a person's on the platform, then that's not just a random situation. That's something that we have to kind of re-emphasize what the targets are for them. Number 3, give them tools. We have to do what we can to help facilitate growth. So again, I keep coming to the vocalist, the vocalist example, but it's just probably the easiest one. So we'll just keep going with it. So for my vocals, I've passed along the info for my vocal coach. I've gone on YouTube and found some great resources because not everybody can afford vocal lessons. So I've found a few different vocal coaches who post videos on YouTube. I've passed those on. I've partnered weaker vocals in my team with stronger vocals in my team and told them to work together. I do what I can to remove excuses from growth and development. Because if I've given people a bunch of tools, then what will happen is they have the option to either pick up the tools and use them or they don't. And then that helps because then we know what it is we're dealing with. It helps me to see, okay, this person is really interested in growing. They just don't have the finance for it, or they just didn't know where to start. Or no, this person isn't interested in growing. They're complaining. It just helps me to know what it is we're looking at and then how I respond. But we have to give people tools. Again, this even feeds into kind of clarity. If people are just kind of left out there on their own, they don't know what to do. So it's our job to help develop them. So we give them tools so that they can continue to develop. So again, it's a little bit extra work on our end as leaders, but if we can do some of the work, that'll help them. It makes it so much more accessible. Number 4, check up on their progress. So we've given someone a tool, we've given them something to work on. We want growth to be an ongoing conversation because growth is an ongoing process. This isn't hey, I talked to you once 2 years ago about taking lessons. What have you done? It's an ongoing conversation, and we want to strip any stigma and any fear away from it. We want to show people that being in a process is okay. We all are actually in a constant process. And so make it an ongoing conversation. So I've had vocals come through auditions, but they're not quite ready for the main team yet. So I give them things to work on. I give them the tools, and then I come back to them and I check in a month or so later. I have them sing for me. How are you feeling about this? I keep circling back to check on them to see how they're feeling in their growth, to check their development, and check in on them so that they don't feel lost. So make sure that you're checking in on your team's progress. Plus, it's a great opportunity too, if they feel like they need more tools or whatnot, you circle back and you can help them. Number 5, give regular and honest feedback. People cannot work on issues they're not aware of. So I like to use the word feedback instead of criticism because even constructive criticism still sounds painful. So feedback I find to be a lot more of a positive. It's disarming for people. So give them regular and honest feedback. I always say give 2 positives for every perceived negative, because again, we don't want people to feel attacked. And so for every one thing that I can pick out about someone that I need to give them feedback on, I always try to encourage them with 2 other things. But we want to give people regular and honest feedback. Again, most people do want to grow. Most people do want to improve, and if they don't know what they need to grow in and what they need to improve on, then they don't know what they're shooting for. They don't know what they're working towards. So let's give regular and honest feedback. Number 6, encourage their efforts. Encourage them. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, so encourage each other, build each other up, just as you're already doing. Cheer them on. We want people on our team to really feel like they are being supported and cheered on by their leaders. As the leaders, we've got to be some of the biggest cheerleaders for our team, really. And so the nice thing is too, is then we infuse a culture of encouragement. Again, we lead by example. So what our team sees us doing, they're going to do. And so as I encourage teammates, then they're going to start encouraging teammates. And before you know it, we have a team of encouraging people. And that's exactly what we want. So encourage their efforts, even if they still have a way to go in their growth, but you see them making an effort, encourage it. And number 7, reward improvement. So what we feed grows. If someone is working hard to grow, I reward it with opportunity. Even if they aren't quite where I'm hoping they are yet, I want to reward the fact that they are working hard at it, that they are trying, that they are putting in the energy, they're putting in the time. I will reward it with some sort of opportunity. So, they'll have a solo when they go lead in youth, or I'm going to entrust them with some sort of a project because I want to feed that effort in them so that they continue to work. So reward that improvement in them. And finally, number 8, pray for them specifically. This is your team. Pray for them specifically and love them generously. Romans 12:10 says, love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. We have to remember as leaders to really be praying for our team, because God's the one who's really, really working on their hearts, and God's the one shepherding them even greater than we are. So we pray specifically for our team and love them generously. I know that it can be hard with volunteers. It's tough when we have something that we've got to get done every weekend. We've got a service that we have to put on, but we want to make sure more than anything that we are communicating genuine love, that we care about our team, that we know about their lives, that everything isn't just about a production. We care about them as a person. So pray for them and love them. That's it.
Great. So that's so you were drinking from a fire hydrant right there. It's all, Jen, that's very helpful, because as I was going through, I was thinking some stuff like, man, yeah, I'm killing it right there with my team. And I'm really sucking it right there with my team. So as you're going through, it's good to kind of evaluate and don't feel like, man, well, Jen's killing it at all this, like, because we know that she's probably got struggles like we do. Hey, Colin, I'd like to answer your question. Colin asked a question in terms of the 6-month waiting period, which I feel like is really healthy, because you do weed out the people that want to be rock stars.
Yeah.
But that suck at karaoke. Anyway, sorry, a little bitterness I still have from some stuff in the past. Colin asked this: how do you implement the process? The team that's already been there, tell them they all need to step away from 6 months for 6 months. No, here's why I wouldn't do that. One, nobody's gonna be leading worship in your church. Yeah. Second, they've already been there for 6 months. They've acclimated. Right. But I wouldn't let that stop you from doing it. I think you can say, hey guys, we're just kind of implementing this new thing. So anybody who comes on now, we're going to ask them for 6 months to serve somewhere else. So you just grandfather everybody else in, but it also helps to raise the standard for the people that are there. Like, oh man, you really are serious about this. So we have, thanks to Jen, we have recruited, and now we have more people than we know what to do with. We have developed this amazing team. And so we're done. We're over with. Like, it's good, except that we're not done. I want to talk about pastoring, and then I want to talk about releasing. If I ask you, who's the pastor to your team, what would your response be? Who's the pastor to your team? Here's the correct answer. It's you. Oh, I don't have the title pastor. It's you. I think it's the senior pastor. It's not. It's you. It's highly likely that you are the biggest spiritual influencer in their life, and the closest person to them. For many of them, that's probably true. So one thing I've had to learn as a leader, there were a lot of seasons where, if I was honest with myself, I was using my team as a means to an end. I need a guitar player. Please play guitar, and just don't bring all of your junk issues in here. Right? I need a bass player to get through the night. I can't believe my drummer quit on me again, like whatever. But I began to look at them and pass. So you have to pastor them. So how do you pastor them? First of all, here's your fill in the blank. You have to set clear spiritual expectations in the recruiting process. Jen's talked a little bit about that. Like, you have to say, here, if you're going to be on platform, here's what this means. So you in your context are going to have to wrestle around with a question like, does somebody need to be a Christian in order to worship at church? I've seen plays both sides. I've heard out of the mouth of a worship pastor, I get excited when my worship team starts to become Christians. And I was like, what? He's like, yep, it's evangelism. And for them, it is evangelism. Somebody else who says, I would never put anybody on the stage who's not a follower of Jesus, who doesn't know how to worship, because they are leading worship. I've settled that in my life. You need to settle that in your life. And then you're going to back into that, and you're going to set spiritual expectations, if you have any, for people who are on the stage. So early on in ministry, a guy came, he auditioned, and I'm like, where are you with your relationship to Christ, your faith in Christ? He's like, I'll just be honest with you, I haven't made a commitment yet. And I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I don't think I would do this now, but I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'd love for you to continue to play. Maybe I would do this now. I would love for you to continue to be in rotation every now and then when we need you, because I knew that was probably the only evangelistic touch in his life, but I also knew that couldn't be sustained. So I said to him, I'm fine with your relationship with Jesus as long as it's going to progress, and we have to continue to talk about that openly. So he got to the place where he did make a commitment to Christ, was baptized, and then moved in with his girlfriend. Bro, what's up? So I just had to have the conversation, because I set clear spiritual expectations. Like, you can't have sex with your woman in lead worship. Like, it just doesn't, unless you're married. It just doesn't work like that. And so we had to have the conversation. I said, man, I'm going to have to ask you to step down. And his girlfriend was all bent out of shape about it. You know what he said to his girlfriend? I don't blame the guy. I don't blame him. Because they set this expectation up front. So set clear spiritual expectations. Expectations of like your quiet time. We continue to harp on that. Like, it's expected that you're spending time with the Lord. Second, get in their business. Get in there. And here's what I mean by getting in their business. Birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations, like, celebrate with them, follow with them. Right now, I have one of my team members, he's one of my staff guys, is in one of our best children's hospitals with this kid who's having seizures. What am I doing? I'm texting him, bro, how are you doing? I know you're ate up. Hey, man, I saw this thing that talked about, I was reading a quick article and thought of him. So I just took a snapshot of it and sent it to him. I want to get in his business. One of the wisest thing one of my mentors said to me, I called him and I'm like, man, I got somebody who's falling apart on me. They think they were in the hospital or something, or like maybe there's a suicide attempt, or it was something real awkward that I'm like, I don't know what to do. And he said to me, walk into the water. Just walk into the water. Like, it's going to be awkward. You're going to get wet. You're not going to know what to say or do. Walk into the water. You got to get into their business. Here's the third one. You got to wound them sometimes. Sometimes pastors and in shepherding, you have to wound. Like, his rod and his staff, they comfort me, right? Comfort from the rod. And the rod sometimes has to wound. That means you have to hold them spiritually accountable. This is not I'm better than you are. This is like, sometimes you just need somebody to sit down with you and go, not so awesome. I had that happen a few weeks ago. A friend of mine said, hey, can I come in and have coffee? Great, let's have coffee. Bought me coffee. Then he's like, man, I felt like when you said this, it just didn't set real well. And I'm telling you, I sucked. I hated the conversation. It wounded me, but it made me better. And it's what it says in Proverbs, right? The wounds of better than open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted. I would rather have somebody wound me to my face than lie to me, right? Or say something behind my back. So wound them, but gently. Do it as a shepherd, and don't do it when you're angry, because you're just going to come back, have to have another conversation and apologize to them. So just don't do it when you're angry, right? And then finally, there in pastoring, this is just echoing what Jen said. Set the example. You have to set the example. I will never ask somebody to do something that I'm not doing. I will never preach on tithing or talk about tithing if I'm not tithing. Or talk about forgiving if I'm not forgiving, or talk about my time. And it's like, I'm not going to ask people to have a quiet time with the Lord if I don't have a quiet time with the Lord. I'm not going to ask people to be forgiving or loving if I'm not. So I want to model it, because they're looking at you as your shepherd, and they're only going to go as high as you do. Man, if they hear you trash talking your pastor, guess what they're going to do? They're going to join in and going to trash talk your pastor. If they hear you doing this or being forgiving, you are going to set the level. And if you're, here's the harsh reality. If you are not pleased, or if you're not satisfied with the spiritual level of your worship team, whose fault is that? Okay, I'll just go on. Everything's a teaching moment. Everything is a teaching moment. Okay. And so something as simple as this, if you say this, man, guys, let's say you just finished a rehearsal, guys, going to be a great day because that sound was really dialed in. What have you just said to them? You have said to them, the greatness of our day is going to be determined by how good the mix is. You just taught them that. Just by saying that, you taught them that, because they're listening to what you're saying. But if you say this, man, guys, like I'm just so overwhelmed with the fact that Jesus hung bloody on the cross and washed my trash away. And I'm just like, that when we sang that song, I was overwhelmed and ate up with that. You're going to have to give me a minute here. Like, what's that going to teach them? That's, man, here's somebody who's really pursuing Jesus, who's really, really taking this to heart. So set the example, and every moment is a pastoring moment. Okay. Now let's talk about releasing, because this is the ugly stuff that nobody really talked about talked to me about. I thought everything just went great in church, and everybody was really doing great. There would be no problems at all. Okay. Here we go. How do we release? Let me give you 3 reasons that you might release somebody. First of all, is the easy one. You might release them for mission. Somebody may say, I feel called to another geographical location. It gets a little harder when somebody says this, and says it in truth. I feel like I'm called to go to another church. not because nobody's recognizing my talent here, but because I feel like I feel like the Lord's calling me here and they're not going to pay me. I'm just going to change churches and I'm going to be able to help them out. We've had that happen before. I had a church, a guy called me and say, "Hey, we want to hire one of your guys interim to lead worship for us." And I'm like, go, bro. Like, go. We are kingdom minded. And if you can, I don't want to hoard all of the worship and production teams, man. I want to spread that out. So if they feel called to somewhere else, man, we want to move. And we tell, and this is even to our full-time staff, we say, listen, I will bless you coming in and I want to bless you going out. Some people I'm like, bless you, get out of here. Like, but I want to bless you if you're going out, because I want you to be, I want the kingdom to be stronger because you're in it. So we may bless people for mission, right? Or we may release people for mission. We may have to release people for discipline. All right. And this is where it doesn't give. Okay. I'm going to talk about releasing, and then I'm going to talk about restoring, or about discipline, restoring. This is discipline. This is the harsher one. But there are times when you just have to go, done, bro. Done. Scriptural precedence for that in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. It says this: hand this man over to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, so that his spirit may be saved on the day of the Lord. Because you run up into some crazies in worship and production. Let's be honest. You run and you'll have conversations. If you haven't already, you'll have conversations with people, and you'll look at them and you're like, are you crazy right now? And then what you'll find out is that they are crazy, especially when it comes to affairs. Especially, I can't speak to women in affairs. I can speak to men in affairs. And one of my mentors, who's a professional licensed therapist, would say that he believes that there's a point where men literally go insane when it comes to affairs. And I've had conversations with friends like that, where I'm in the middle of a conversation and I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm bringing common sense to the table, and you evidently have lost your brain. It's gone. And that happens. I had a conversation with a guy who had been on our worship team forever, built our church up. He's moved for shake, like probably one of the greatest musicians in his pocket awesome. Calls me, been married for probably 35 years. Somebody said, "Hey, just want you to know that we're getting a divorce." Really? This guy was also was my youth leader. And then I came back and was like on staff and all that. So he's a bit older than me. And I'm like, really, divorced? Yeah. I'm like, so there's another woman. Yeah. And I thought, I don't think I said it because it was a long time ago, but I thought, and I probably should have said it. Maybe not. Maybe it's just me being mad. But I thought to myself, man, the sex must be amazing. It has to be mind blowing, because you're throwing away your family. You're throwing away your wife. You're throwing away your kids. You're throwing away your direction. You're throwing away your ministry. Like, it's all gone. Your ministry's gone. It's done. And so my response to that was this: I'm done, because you have already made a decision. You said, here's what we're doing. There's no remorse. There's nothing like that. Like, I'm not going to stop praying for you, but my hope is that the Lord would take your face and shove it in the ground, and you realize what in the world you are doing. So I'm turning you over for discipline, man. I'm letting the Lord discipline you. That's all I can do. Okay. Now that's an extreme case, and that doesn't always happen, but there are times that you just need to release for discipline. And sometimes you get to, well, I can't do this, man. Why can't I do this and do this? Yeah, because these aren't congruent, man. Like, you can't be cooking meth on Saturday and leading worship on Sunday. Like, it just doesn't work. Okay. So you just need to turn people over for discipline sometimes. Here's the harder one. As hard as that is, I think it's harder to release people for restoration. Okay. Now, because you are a pastor leader, even though you may not have a title, okay, your goal is always restoration. You want to restore people to Jesus. That's why with my friend who's like, I'm getting a divorce, I'm like, I want to restore you to Jesus, but you're not going to listen to me. So I'm going to turn you over for discipline, because the real end of discipline in this situation is that you would be restored. So always, I'm trying to look through my frustration. I'm trying to look through my disappointment and say, I want you to be restored to Jesus. Galatians 6:1. If somebody's caught in sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. So there's a gentle, okay? Now, this doesn't mean that you're a wimp about it. You can be gentle and very firm. I'm gentle. Gentle answer turns away wrath, right? So I'm not coming in angry. I'm going to work through my anger before I talk to the two people on my worship team that I just found out were sleeping together. Okay. I'm going to work on my anger for a couple of days. Then we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to be calm. Okay. I'm going to be gentle, but I'm also going to be very deliberate in what I do. Here's what we say. Here's what is true for us right here, and I think is a great goal for for ministries. We say this all the time. This is a great place to fall apart and be put back together. This is a great place to fall apart and be put back together. And we've had people fall apart and put them back together. Now, how successful they are really is dependent on them. So we literally have a written process for restoration if somebody's caught, and it just starts with somebody is in sin. And so they're either caught in sin or they have confessed and said, here's what's up. And we've got a whole deal with that. It's a flow chart. It's like if this, then this, right? So the first question is, are they repentant? And if it's like, no, we're like, oh, okay, this is a discipline issue. Then we're turning you over. All right. If they're yes, then we can continue on. Either way, they're removed from public ministry. And we like to take them we like to take them out of all ministry. That's ideal. Well, you're punishing me. You're punishing me. Now shut your face. We are not punishing you, but you have proven that you can't give 10 to 15 hours a week to the ministry when your marriage is falling apart. So take that 10 or 15 hours. Now you're going to put that in counseling. You're going to do all these things, right? Well, I don't think that's dumb. I don't want to do it. Yeah, well, shut up. You're acting dumb anyway. So just listen to us, right? Okay. Again, I say it a little nicer than that. So we're going to remove them from ministry. Okay, which sounds negative, but we say, we're going to give you space. And part of the thing is we want to restore you. So our goal is that you would be restored to Jesus, number one, and then that you would be restored to whatever ministry. That's our goal, to Jesus first, and then to ministry. So with that, are you repentant? Because we can't do anything without repentance, right? Okay, you are repentant. Great. Then we have some very specific steps that include stuff like you're going to go to counseling. If you need help with counseling, we're going to pay for counseling. Why? Because I'm pastoring this team. Okay, I don't want any excuses. We're going to pay for counseling. You're going to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which means that your counselor is going to call me or whoever's leading it. Right? If you're the worship leader, is going to call you to say, "Hey, Jimmy, bass player, is this dude is just snowing everybody. Like he's coming in like it's all together, but it's not. Like you need to be in that process." And so legally, your counselor his counselor can't talk to you, but if he signs a non-disclosure, I think that's what it's called. Somebody else, one of our coaches may know different on that. But anyway, it gives you permission to know all of that. There's an agreed upon time. Hey, we're going to go through this process for this time. We're going to continually reevaluate. Okay. Again, we want to get you back to Jesus and we want to get you back to ministry. I don't want to get you back to ministry without getting you back to Jesus, because what's going to happen? Repeat. We're going to end up right where we are. Again, okay, we've worked this several times. I had 2 worship team leaders who we found out were in an affair. So they're automatically in our offices saying like, okay, here's the restoration process. I'm looking for brokenness. Our team leaders are looking for brokenness as they walk through there. And we say all the time, like, look, you're gonna have to do some really hard work. In the not so distant past, I had one of our full-time team members that we caught in an affair. Now that frosts me, because part of me in my carnal nature, I'm like, we're sitting in this room because you were caught, not because you repented. Okay, so I've got to work through that anger. But we sat down with them, and so we said, okay, here's our restoration process. If you want to be a part of it, this is what it looks like. Boom, 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 boom. What usually happens with folks when you're in a restoration process is they're like, yeah, no, bro, man, like I have, man, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And they really are. They're sorry. They're broken. They're repentant. Like, man, I've really spent a lot of time with Jesus, like a whole 2 hours over the past 48 hours. And Jesus, I mean, he's calling me to, he's calling me to do worship. And so, yeah, man, I appreciate you guys' help and everything, but I'm good. Let's go. I'm good. Like, no, sorry, bro. So this particular person we sat down with and we said, listen, we estimate that your restoration process, because there's a ton of brokenness in there, that your restoration process of putting your marriage back together, we have heart issues that you need to address. You have betrayal and lying. I mean, it was a whole gamut of stuff. And a guy who was broken and really wanted to work on it. And we said, we estimate that this is going to be about a 12-month process. 12 months, that's a year. Now, here's what we were forced to say. Look, man, we want you restored to Jesus, and we want you restored to the ministry. And this person was in full-time ministry. And we said, we want to walk with you in that. And we're telling you that we'll walk with you through that, to the point that we're gonna pay for all your counseling. If you stay in counseling, we're going to pay for all of your counseling as long as you stay in town. But the reality is this, organizationally, and this is where you have to balance pastor and organization, church and all that. The reality is I can't, so you're out of ministry right now. Like you're on a furlough, sabbatical, whatever we're called, like you're on paid leave. Let's say that you're on paid leave right now. And this is going to be a 12-month process. Right now, we don't have the budget to pay you for 12 months for not working in our church. And I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just the reality of where we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to severance you generously. And then on the outside, you're like, oh man, that's nice. Sleep with somebody else and you get a 3-month severance. Listen, I want to fall on the part of doing as much as we can to help other people. Okay. And sometimes I can go a little bit further than maybe we should, but I never want at the end to go like, well, if we just would have. So we said to this particular person, give you a 3-month severance. If you want to stick around in town, so then after that, you grab another job, do whatever, see how bad you want this. And then if you want to come back into ministry, that might be a possibility, or it might not, because organizationally, I can't have an open position that I have to, an open position. This is 25%. I had 4 people in worship and production. So 25% of my worship and production team now are down. I can't operate for 12 months at a 25% deficit because it's going to kill my other 3 guys. And so unfortunately, I can't hold this for you. And so we're going to have to hire somebody else in there. That's the unfortunate reality. Are we being mean? No. But that restoration gets super, super sticky and complicated in the middle of that. And they understood that. They chose actually to move away to work on their marriage. And we're like, okay, awesome, great. We want to still encourage you to do counseling and all that. But per our agreement, we're not going to continue to pay for your counseling because we can't monitor it. All it would be phone calls along. We felt like that was good stewardship. So, I mean, obviously you don't want to get to the place where that happens, but we're human and it does. And what we continue to say to people is this: we'll not work harder at your restoration than you do. We will not work harder at your restoration than you do. And when we feel like we're working harder at it, then we're done. And it just gets really, really, really tough. But here's what I know: the more we set these expectations on the front end, the less mess we'll have on the back end. You're still going to have a mess. All right. It's still going to happen. The older you get, for my old timers in ministry, like you're just like, yep, I didn't know who was going to have an affair or when they were going to have an affair, but there it is. I didn't know who was going to be drunk and have an alcoholic problem, but I knew somebody was, and there it is. It's human nature, right? But what do? We call them back to Jesus, call them back to the cross, and we call them back to each other. And we never want to blackball anybody at all. Like, we're fallen, right? And we're going to stay in this, and we're going to go. Okay. And I find a lot of times that sometimes the messes come because we focus more on talent than we do spiritual maturity. All you're talking about is talent. All you're talking about is filling this, and not spiritual maturity and setting those expectations. Then we get that we can get ourselves in trouble. So that was in record time. There's your fire hydrant drinking right there. So unfortunately, we don't have a special guest. I know everybody's like, I'm here for the special guest. So sorry about it, but we'll do it. We'll come around next time. If you would like, here, let me say this. There's so much in here. I think what would be helpful is to go through, especially as Jen was talking, I'm like, man, that would be good to go through and put this in your own context, because your church is very different than Jen's church, very different than my church, and different than Dan's and Sam's, and everybody has a different church. So in your context, like, what does it look like when Jen says to check up on their progress? What might that look like? And maybe just choose an area and say, like, I feel like in this season, I'm weak in recruitment. So what are a couple things I can do to firm that up? Or I'm weak in development. What can I do? And I'm here. Your coaches are here. If you have any questions, or it's just like, man, I'm just kind of in a jam here. More than anything, I can tell you what not to do, because I can tell you what I did that didn't work. And so let me make the mistake so you don't have to. So I would encourage you to do that. And then if you are interested, just send me an email. I do have the restoration documents that we use, that we walk people through when there's been some kind of moral failure. So that's a couple-page document. We just worked through that over the years. So beyond that, let me tell you this, man. I don't know if you get thanked for what you do, but thank you for staying in the game, and thank you for staying in the game in this season. I'm convinced more and more that the people that that our primary focus has to be keeping people connected to Jesus. And there are a few powerful ways that doing that than in worship, whether it's corporate worship or through live stream or whatever. So listen, don't ever think that what you're doing doesn't matter, because it matters greatly. As twisted up as my life gets and as frustrated as it is, what recenters me is when I'm in worship, and corporate worship, especially for me. But if I can't, then it's like, it's the streaming that you're bringing to me. But there's something about that I'm just like, okay, yes. All the world, even in its chaoticness, seems to be okay right now because I'm connecting with Jesus a little bit differently. And so thank you for doing that for me, and really for the thousands of people that you're touching. And keep yourself healthy, and don't back down. Continue to chase Jesus, right? Okay. So that being said, our time is up. Let me pray, and then we'll get out of here. And any questions, shoot them over our way, and we'd be happy to help however we can. Okay. Father, we love you. Grateful for the calling that you've put on our life, even though, man, some days it just seems to be pretty overwhelming. But we thank you that you've given us the gift of your Holy Spirit, and that all that we're facing right now is no secret to you. And so thank you that you have trusted my friends in this season. And because you trust them, you're giving them everything that they need. Everything. Some of you need to calm down, man, because you're all worked up, like you just don't know. And the Lord's like, it's good. I got you. Like, I have my Holy Spirit. You have inside of you the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead. So I bet he can get your team together for this weekend. So Lord, thank you that you're at work, even when we're not sure that we can see you around the corner. And Lord, I just pray that you continue to infuse hope and joy and power in the lives of these leaders, as they literally thousands of people all over the world. We love you. We pray these things in the powerful name of your beautiful Son. Amen. Amen. Thanks, guys.